What is up, everybody? It is Zog here, back with another video, and in today's video I'm going to show you how to do the Paladin Mara 300 pull in 13 minutes. Huge shout out to Ted J, who did this back in Classic and had his jump back and forth strategy. But now that we're in TBC, it's actually going to be a little bit easier and a little bit more mainstream, I think. And so I want to show you guys exactly how I do it. I also want to show you guys that this Flame Strike, a lot of my damage, 24% of it actually is coming from Skull Flame Shield. And we're going to show you healing in just a second, but you're going to see a ton of the healing is coming from Skull Flame Shield. And so one of the things I would highly recommend having before you go do this farm, you don't need it, but it will definitely help, is Skull Flame Shield, because it's going to help you survive much easier and pump out a ton more damage, maybe if you don't have the exact amount of spell power that I have. So let's talk about the requirements a little bit and the recommendations that I have for consumables. Obviously, guys, this is a mage pool typically, but now paladins are really able to do it pretty comfortably, and that's what I'm going to show you here. But you will need a few things. So Zanza pots. So those are the Zandalarian hero, tokens that you turn in, and you get the Zanza speed pot. It's 20% speed. Now you can be a Pursuit of Justice spec. It will be a little bit more difficult to aggro up the mobs, but you could be a Pursuit of Justice spec. However, that 15 to 20% is actually a huge difference, because it looks like mobs honestly run at about 15%. And so if they're right on your tail, you're not going to get away from them. Whereas with the Zanza, you're able to get away from them. Greater Arcane Elixirs. This is going to increase your spell power by 35. Blessed Wizard Oil. That's definitely not what it's called. I'll have a link up on screen, but it increases your spell power by, I believe, 42. And then you have the food, the Basilisk food, which increases your spell power by 23. The combination of these three consumables is going to increase your spell power by 100. You need to have a blend of defense and spell power. And as you can see from my gear right now, I have a good amount of defense, and I'm also focusing a lot on spell power, and especially my cape, which is just pure holy damage. You want to be able to kill the mobs quick enough, while at the same time not taking too much damage when you don't have your bubble, because there will be a period you don't have your bubble. So how I recommend starting is you run over and you run past Princess, you jump off, you pop bubble so you don't take any fall damage, and then we're going to aggro these mobs up with either meleeing, Judgment, or with Holy Shock. And so you will have to be the Holy Shock build for this, and I'll have the talents after this. Holy Shock is going to be really useful just to aggro. Now, there are a few points we get after Holy Shock to increase our damage a little bit, and so that's how we could reach that like 600 spell power that I have. But the Holy Shock is going to be really important to aggro up the mobs. You can be a Pursuit of Justice defense spec, and we were able to pull it off, but it was much sloppier. The kill phase was faster, but it was much sloppier because we ran into the issues of not really being able to aggro the mobs without meleeing them, and then you're just running, zigzagging a little bit more, and the mobs are catching up to you. While also running through and aggroing up the mobs, it's important to note that the large rock elementals and the cavern shamblers, which we'll find in a little bit later, stun. And so there's a chance at any time that they're in melee range, they can stun you. So my recommendation to aggro the large rock elementals, as you can see one behind us right there, or the shamblers, is a stun, a max range Holy Shock, or going with like a Consecrate or something like that. And so I will use Consecrate to pull a little bit. But here you can see I have stun up, so I'm going to stun the large Guardian so he can't stun me. The little Shardlings aren't going to do anything. They're just going to hit you a little bit, and so you can aggro them. But we're running up the way from the Princess side here. We have all of our consumables on. We have Blessing of Wisdom on. We're going to drop down a Consecrate right here. I actually miss this group, and so the kill count on this specific kill is lower, but you can see from the one before as we started the video, it was at 330. So you can get 330 each time. That's pretty much what I'm averaging. But with this individual pool, I did miss that pack, and then I was a little bit too far ahead of the boars in a little bit, which we'll talk about, which caused me to have about 311 mobs, but still really good mob count. We're going to come around the side here, and then if you started the run immediately once you entered in the instance, after a reset, the Guardian should be right there. And so you should be able to aggro both of those groups with one Consecrate. Now, it's important that you reset the instance right before you go into the Mara Scepter portal. That is going to allow you to get those mobs, and oftentimes allow you to get those mobs as well. But we're going to aggro these last groups, and then we're actually going to pop bubble here. We're going to stack up the mobs in the corner, and then we're going to fall down. So we've now aggroed the first part, pop bubble, jump down. Now we're going to pop Divine Favor and heal ourselves up to full with Holy Light. So now we have full mana, pretty much full health. We reapply, Blessing of Wisdom if we had used Bop instead, if you used Divine Shield when you jumped off in the first place. And we're now ready. So the hard thing with a Paladin, mages can blink to help stack up the mobs. Paladins need to keep the mobs close enough to them, but not having a blink still be able to keep them far enough away where you're not going to take damage. And so the stacking process is going to be really important. And so that's why we wait for the mobs to come all the way around the side. Here we have another Guardian, so we're going to stun him right there. We're going to come around the side right here with the Demetrions. We're going to pull them with the max rank Holy Shock. The Demetrions also silence you, so you don't want to get silenced too much. It's not a big deal. In the Paladin, you have bubble, you're able to get away from it, but it is something you just don't want to deal with. We're going to aggro this Hydra. You actually don't want to aggro too many Hydras. So if you want to, you could go run around and aggro up a bunch of Hydras and things like that. But Hydras have a punt mechanic, which will come into play in the actual kill phase. And so we don't want to get punted too much, and they also build up Thrash, which can get annoying. So I don't recommend pulling too many Hydras. They also run faster than the rest of the mobs, so they're kind of just a pain to deal with. So pull some that are right in your pathway. Don't go out of your way to pull extra Hydras. At the end of the day, you know, a 330 versus a 334 kill count is not going to make a drastic difference. We're now going to come to the top here, and here's where we're going to use our first instance of Swiftness Potion. So you will need 2 potions in addition to the consumables, and that is Swiftness Potion and Free Action Potion. So we're going to aggro that last group over in the corner with Holy Shock, and then we're going to sprint up the sideway with a Swiftness Potion, making sure that we can get away from the mobs without taking too much damage. It's okay if you take a good amount of damage. You'll be able to heal yourself up soon. Aggro this mob with either a Judgment or a Consecrate. Save your Holy Shock, because we're going to need our Holy Shock here. We're going to Judgment the guy on the left. We're going to Holy Shock the guy on the far left, and we're going to use our first grenade. Now, I use Iron Grenades because I am an engineer. You do not need to be an engineer for this. You can also use Easy Throw Dynamite. And so if you want to use Easy Throw Dynamite, that's non-engineer, you will have to get a little bit closer, but you can use that there. You will have bop. You can bop there if you need to, just to be able to get away from the mobs. Perfectly okay. You'll have bop up in plenty of time when you actually need it for the next part. And then we're going to run around the corner. So now we've aggroed, you know, the Hydras, we've aggroed the rock elementals and everyone from the bottom side. And now we're going to go up to the top in the purple side and aggro up the purple side mobs. Now the purple side mobs are about to run through a bunch of shamblers, so it's important to try to aggro them for max distance so you run, you know, the lowest chance of getting stunned. If you get stunned, it's not the, you know, end of the world. You can bop out of it if you need to, but you can probably just tank the damage. You know, we're pretty tanky at this point, especially if you're running a decent defense build. You should be perfectly fine. But here what I want to do is I want to heal myself to full. Now I have full health, full mana, make sure I have Blessing of Wisdom, and I'm actually going to run around the right side of the tree. Here's where I should have waited a little bit longer. Some of the mobs were pretty far back, so wait for the mobs to get pretty close there before you run around the side of the tree. That way the mobs can kind of stack up a little bit more, and so they don't run the risk of being too far away where they reset. Come around the side, we're going to run into this green slime pack, and we're going to Consecrate right in the middle. The slimes are actually 2 separate packs, so it's a pack of 2 and a pack of 3. You want to make sure that you aggro all of them with a Consecrate. We're then going to run past the Shambler and then Judgment him while we're past him. You can see there now he's not in range to get the stun. We're going to stun this one as we run by, and then we're going to run over to the slime pack. And so we have this Cavern Lurker right here. He's actually going to aggro himself, so we don't need to worry about him. We're going to Judgment this Shambler right here, Holy Shock this back one, and then sprint up the side. So you can see we got hit by the Shambler maybe, you know, a couple times. I'm going to aggro these far groups with Iron Grenades. If you can't get them with an Iron Grenade, you can use Easy Throw Dynamite, as we said before. But we were able to stay away from the Cavern Shamblers and not take too much damage. Again, here, this is a group of 2 and 3, so we want to pop Consecrate right there and then run up the sideways. Now, this is probably the most important part about the instance. You're going to have a lot of resets if you do not do this. These small creeping sludges move very slowly. However, they also take all the mobs with them if they reset, if they aggroed onto you. So the key here is that you need to aggro them. They cannot aggro you. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to immediately Holy Shock at max rank to try to grab that guy immediately. If he aggroed onto us, again, when he resets, he'll reset some of the mobs with him. We're then going to run through this Cavern Lurker on the right. We're going to Exorcism the far group, and then we're going to pop a Swiftness Potion again. We need to get a little bit of distance from these mobs, or they're going to be too close to us in the next section. This is going to help us get ahead so we can get all the mobs that we need to. Judgment that left one again from a distance, and then we're actually going to drop a Consecrate along the wall. That's going to aggro those sludges before they aggro. So the second group of Creeping Sludges on the left, we Judgment as we run by them. And then the last group we Consecrate on the side wall to aggro them. We're then going to run up to the top here, Holy Shock one of the mobs in that group, and then jump down. Here you can heal up if you need to. We don't need to heal up right there. So we're instead just going to drop a Consecrate, aggro this Tangler on the inside. We will skip the Tangler on the far outside there, but the other Stomper will be automatically aggroed. You can aggro these guys with a Consecrate as you run by them. And then we're going to go into the side room. Make sure you're despelling yourself when you have dots up just to take as little damage as possible. We're going to go in the side room here, and we're going to aggro these groups of 3, groups of satyrs. And so we're going to run through, we're going to exorcism the far one, holy shock, and then we're going to consecrate the back one. And then you can pop figurine of the Colossus right here. And so figurine of the Colossus, as we're going to go over the gear in a bit, is going to be a piece of gear that you will need. And so we can pop it here, and you're seeing that it is healing us up a decent bit. It's not a ton because we're not blocking a ton right here. If we had Holy Shield, we'd be able to be healed up pretty much to full just from the figurine right there. But we do heal up a decent bit with the figurine of the Colossus, and then we're able to run through the area having a decent amount of health. Holy Shock, the bottom mob, this is all rank 1, by the way. And then we run around the side here. Now, I don't have a way to pull those 2 treants, but we're going to skip those 2 treants, but we're going to focus on aggroing up all these mobs as quickly as possible and avoiding damage. Holy Shock right here on the bottom to aggro this Stomper right there. He'll run through and potentially aggro one of them. And then we Judgment the group over on the left. Then we use our Easy Throw Dynamite or our Iron Grenade on the far group over here to aggro this last pack of mobs as we run through. If you can't get those because the mobs are too close or they're hitting you, don't even worry about it. It's just a pack. Perfectly fine to skip them. So now we're into the kill phase room. We need to aggro up all the mobs though. We need to get the mobs before we can actually go into the kill phase. So what we're going to do here is we're going to aggro those mobs, hug the outside here so you don't get hit by the mobs below too much. Make sure you have the mobs facing your front. That way you're blocking their damage. So you're being able to use your avoidance that you have being a higher level. Come around the side. We're going to run up onto the ramp with the mobs. And then we're going to jump down. And our goal here is actually to get the mobs stacked. So what we're actually going to do is we're actually going to pop Bop, run into the mobs to try to stack them up, but don't face yourself off the corner yet because you can get punted back right there. And so you can see the Hydras can punt us. So at 3 seconds, we want to make sure we start moving towards this post and jump down onto this post. This is a pathing spot where the mobs go around. If you're familiar with the mage bullets, you're probably 100% familiar with this post. But we're able to get healed up here, and now we need to wait for Forbearance. So because we had to use Bop there, Forbearance is now up. But once we get into the kill phase, we're going to want to make sure that we have bubbles. So I'm going to try to stack up the mobs even more. So I'm going to run up to the top section again. We're going to wait for the mobs to run up the ramp here. And then we're going to jump back down. Again, stacking up the mobs as much as possible. Jump back onto this, totem pole. And then they run back one more time. At this point, we have 18 seconds left of Forbearance, so we know that we can go into the kill phase. And so in the kill phase, what we want to do is we want to make sure that we get set up for the kill phase before we actually start it. Now, what I mean by this is that so far in the instance, we've been running through just trying to maintain our maximum mana. We've been trying to, take a little bit of damage, not too much. Once we get to the kill phase, we're going to be, face tanking 300 plus mobs. And so we want to make sure that we can survive. The ways we're going to survive is Blessing of Sanctuary. That's going to decrease the raw damage that we take from abilities. And we're also going to put on our Skull Flame Shield. Skull Flame Shield has a 3% chance to heal you and steal life from the enemy, and it also has a 1% chance to proc 100 damage on all mobs. Because there's 300 mobs hitting us, every 2 seconds, we're on average going to get about 1.5 procs of the Skull Flame Shield, dealing damage to the mobs. And since it does 100 damage to 300 mobs, it does quite a bit of damage immediately, pumping out the damage. So what we're going to do here is we're going to reapply, Blessing of Sanctuary so we can be a little bit more tanky. We're going to put on our Skull Flame Shield, and then we're going to jump up into this corner. Now we want to have our back into a corner so that if we get punted by the Hydras, we're not getting punted away from the mobs into an awkward position. We're going to put on Blessing of Wisdom to be able to kind of survive a little bit easier. And then I'm going to start spamming. I'm going to drop Consecrate before the mobs get to us, and then I'm going to start spamming my Autoattack macro. Now you want to drop Consecrate before the mobs get to you because the mobs can silence. And so the first Consecrate that we have, we're just trying to do as much damage as we can before we pop Bubble. And so you want to watch your health, keep up the Consecrate. You will get silenced. If you need to bubble, bubble. Otherwise, just wait till Consecrate's almost done and then bubble so that we can immediately drop a Consecrate in bubble. Now my Autoattack macro, basically what this does is it clears your current target, finds the nearest target, and starts auto-attacking it. With Blessing of Wisdom, that means we're going to be able to keep up our mana a little bit easier, and we're going to be able to get back mana. We don't have Reckoning, so we're not going to be able to get the double attacks, which would be awesome to keep up our mana, but we're still able to keep up a good amount of mana while doing the damage. So we're going to pop Consecrate right here. We're going to wait. You can see I get silenced right there for 5 seconds. We get punted up, but because our back is up against the wall, we're good to go. We're going to pop the bubble right here because we could see Consecrate's ending, and there's no way we could get out of Consecrate otherwise. We're going to pop our Zandalarian Hero Charm, which we have to basically pump out as much damage as possible, and now we're taking for 180 a tick for each Consecrate on these mobs, drop down another Consecrate, and now our bubble is rolled off. So at this point, we're going to start taking damage again, right? And so what we need to do is we need to make it so that 1, we can't get stunned, and 2, we can continue to heal. So before bubble, you're going to Consecrate. You're going to wait until you need to bubble or the end of the Consecrate, then you're going to bubble. Then you're going to Consecrate, pop all your damage cooldowns. Zandalarian Hero Charm, hopefully you have the Wrath of Cenarius proc. We'll run through the gear in a little bit. And then at the end of the Consecrate, if we don't pop what's called a free action potion, we will get stunned. And if you get stun locked, you're dead instantly because you can't, avoid the damage. You can't block and things like that. And so you need to pop a free action potion and then Figurine of the Colossus. Figurine of the Colossus basically will heal us 120 every single time that we block. Because we have a decent block chance, it's not too high right now. It's about 14%. We're not incredibly geared yet or anything like that. But we are able to heal all the way up. And we're also still getting Skullflame procs now. So pop those two things, free action potion and that. You can see that we're still silenced, but we still have the Consecrate going from before. You can see occasional spikes of damage, which was the Skullflame shield proccing. And then we just, pop off Consecrate as soon as we can, again, just to try to get down these last mobs. You have a decent chance to resist the silence, but at the end of the day, before the mobs are actually dead, you're going to be getting hit by some of the silences. But now you can see most of the mobs are dead, so we just finished off the last mobs. I'm still, hitting my auto attack macro with my Blessing of Wisdom up to try to get, or Seal of Wisdom, sorry, to try to get as much mana back as possible. And then it's just these last Hydras to finish them off. It was only 311 mobs this time. Other times, though, typically it's about 330. I just had to wait a little bit longer for the boars and not miss that one Shambler or the one rock pack. Make sure to drop your Consecrates in a good place so you don't miss those packs. But in 13 minutes and 21 seconds, we get down 311 mobs and get about 75% of a level for an all. Here you can see the damage though. Look at that. Consecration was 65%, which is fantastic. But Flame Strike from Skullflame Shield actually did 253,000 damage. And then from healing, Skullflame itself was actually 43%, and Figurine of the Colossus was only 33%. So for everybody who's saying that Skullflame is going to be gone and Skullflame isn't great, it is fantastic. Obvious question is going to be, should I use, the poison dot from Sporgar, from Petrified Lycangard? The answer is no. The Sporgar shield takes a really long time to ramp up its damage, and so by the time you actually, finish your kill phase, basically, you will have done hardly any damage. Whereas Skullflame Shield procs better when there's more mobs. And so since we have 300 mobs hitting us at once, Skullflame Shield is 100% the way to go and is going to pump out by far the most damage, way over Petrified Lycangard. Let's jump into the gear and the talents. All right, so let's run through the gear a little bit. Now, the gear is not going to be you need this specific kind of items and you need all this gear. You really don't anymore in TBC because a lot of the gear is itemized to have both defense and also have offense in the form of spell power on the gear already, which is really nice. And that's one thing that makes prop pally farming much easier in TBC. But there are specific pieces that are really going to help you. So the first is going to be Figurine of the Colossus. Every single time that you proc this, it makes it so that each successful block that you have will heal you for 120. You're going to be blocking a ton between Redoubt and then just having the implicit block chance that you already have. So you're going to be able to heal a bunch from Vigilance of the Colossus. Even more though, as we saw, we were able to heal from Skullflame Shield. And so if you have these two items, you're just going to be healing for a ton during the kill phase and going to be able to live. You will have to repair this shield though, just as a heads up, probably every 4, maybe 5 runs if you're lucky. So I would recommend potentially even having 2 if you have the extra gold to do it. Zandalarian Hero Charm is a really good trinket to have just because of the massive raw spell damage increase, and that goes alongside with any other kind of spell damage increase. But the nice thing about Zandalarian Hero Charm is that you can drop Consecrate and then pop it, and it will give all those Consecrate ticks from that previous Consecrate the added damage bonus. And so this is something that is huge because you're able to pump out 204 different additional spell power. Then when I use Consecrate again, it's down to 187. So Zandalarian Hero Charm has a higher spell power at the start, and then it decreases. But because we're able to apply it after the Consecrate and still get the benefit, we're able to kind of maximize out the benefit of this trinket. And then lastly is the Wrath of Cenarius Ring. And so the Wrath of Cenarius Ring is going to give you a huge spell power upgrade because we're hitting 300 mobs at once. The chance that we have the 132 extra damage is almost guaranteed. And so Wrath of Cenarius is going to be amazing, and it's actually best for TBC AoE farming for paladins and into WoW as well. So I highly recommend picking up the Wrath of Cenarius. I have a full guide for how to get it. I'll link it up above. You guys can check it out. It should only take about 5 to 6 hours now that we're in TBC. So it's not too bad of a grind anymore to pick this up. The actual gear itself, you want a blend of defense and you want a blend of spell power. Now you want enough spell power to kill the mobs before you run out of free action potion and Figurine of the Colossus and your bubble. So bubble is going to last 10 seconds. Figurative in the Colossus is going to last 20 seconds, which means that we want to kill them within a 30-second window. You also want to have enough defense so that you're avoiding enough damage. And now defense kind of changes now that we're level 70, killing a 45-ish average level. And we can look at things a little bit differently. So let me get a little bit technical here real quick. So the way that defense actually works when you have a mob much lower than you is that each point of additional defense skill adds 0.04% to the player's chance to be missed to dodge and parry before diminishing returns, and adds 0.04% chance to block with no diminishing returns. And so there is diminishing returns if you want to factor that in. But the idea here is that if a mob is much lower level than you, you're going to have a higher chance to avoid them because their implicit attack level compared to your defense level will be lower. And so I made this spreadsheet basically to help you guys out with that and kind of show you guys how that works. So for example, we have these 3 different gear sets. So we have a defense farm overall, we have a spell power Mara build, and we have a defense Mara build. Right now I'm the spell power Mara build. So if you want to copy exactly what I have, copy this, good to go. But basically if we take our defense level, and we take the average mob level, which in this case is 45, that gives us an extra avoidance of about 40.48%, or here 36.64%. The way that we're doing that is we're taking D2, so defense, minus the mob level times 5, so their implicit defense level, times 0.04 times the 4 different stat weightings. And that gives us an extra avoidance of 36.64%. There's a weak aura in the game that I have, which shows the implicit avoidance, and I'll have that link down below as it's a link to the weak aura that you can get. That shows us our implicit avoidance of 34.47%. So we combine those 2 avoidances together plus the raw mob miss chance of 5%, we get a total avoidance of 76.04%. In theory, it would be possible to get a high enough, defense level, not factoring in any kind of diminishing returns, and avoidance level from your gear to get over 100% and to never get hit. Warriors can 100% do this. I believe that paladins can, but we're probably going to need to have a bit more gear before we can get there. And so because of that, we're still going to need to kill the mobs in a relatively quick fashion. And so then I also have this spell power and then damage multiplier kind of section of this Excel. So this Excel is going to be available for you in a Google Doc down in the description down below. Fill out the orange sections. The white with orange text sections will automatically be calculated based on the other sections. So here we take our spell power from, just our tooltip pre any kind of consumables, our on uses. So this is Zandular and Hero Charm plus our Wrath of Cenarius, plus the extra spell power from consumables. There we have our food, our, elixir, and our weapon oil. And that gives us 947 spell power when everything's going, live. We don't have any damage multipliers because of our build for this farm, so there's nothing here to increase our damage. But then we can see that if we take our consecrate damage, each consecrate is actually doing 1,459. And so compared to the higher defense build, where we're, 13% more avoidance, we have about 400 additional damage per consecrate. This allows our consecrate to tick for about 182, which as you saw before was ticking for about 181 when everything was going on. And then we have additional damage, which I just threw in an estimate of Skullflame Shield at about 500 damage. With a mob health of 4,500, that means that we should kill each mob in about 22 seconds. So I'm going to give you guys this Excel. You can basically plug in your gear. And so you can use the weak aura, and you can use just your defense level with that gear and your avoidance to figure out this out, and then spell power. But your goal is to basically get the kill time sub 25 seconds. 30 seconds is going to be a little bit too long. It's going to cut it a little bit too close. I would recommend having a little bit faster than that. But if you also wanted to go this defense build and just be a little bit more tanky to make sure you're going to live, you'll probably be fine with this as well. But the goal is to aim for about a 25-second kill time so that by the time Figurative Colossus is done and Divine Shield is done, there's not many mobs left for you to kill. So last, let's talk about the talents themselves. These talents are going to basically be focused on aggroing up the mobs, as we talked about during the run, and then being as tanky as possible. So we definitely want to have Blessing of Sanctuary. If you don't want to have Blessing of Sanctuary for whatever reason, you want to have Divine Illumination instead, you can, but it's basically one or the other. We have 41 points in Holy or 21 points in Protection. But we first run down the Protection tree, we get Redoubt to basically increase our chance that we can block, so we get more procs to the Figurative Colossus. We increase our defense skill by 20, which is really nice to try to have as much avoidance as possible. Righteous Fury to decrease the amount of damage that we take by 6%, and then work our way down to Blessing of Sanctuary. We also pick up Guardian's Favor, which reduces our cooldown on Bop, which is going to be really nice during the run itself, and if you need to Freedom for whatever reason. We then go into the Holy Tree, And we work down the Holy Tree, filling out anything that's going to heal us easier and give us back mana. But then basically we're working our way down to Holy Guidance. And so Holy Guidance increases our spell damage and healing by 35% of our total intellect. So we get additional benefit of having our intellect, which is going to be nice, especially when we get better gear. And then we get the Holy Shock right before that. Now, you can mess around with these talents as much as you want, to be honest. The talents that I would highly recommend having are Divine Favor, Holy Shock, and Holy Guidance. If you have those, you should be perfectly fine doing the run and aggroing up all the mobs. And then protection, make sure that you get the Blessing of Sanctuary, in my opinion, just because decreasing that damage you're going to take during the actual kill phase by up to 80, which it has diminishing return, so it's not 80, but then also blocking back 46 holy damage, it's going to be really nice in the kill phase just to try to burn down the mobs a little bit quicker.